Enfys Nest has been a constant irritation forever.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Zareth Prevails. Enfys Nest has been part of this game for about 1.5 years at this point, and whereas her kit hasn't really changed that much, I know that she got a small nerf a little bit ago that didn't really affect much. She really hasn't changed, and yet I feel like a lot of people are still asking me how to counter her and how to beat her, and I hear a lot of comments about, oh well, I have to use Traya against Nest because I can't beat her with Jedi Training Rey, can't beat her with First Order, and I just want to show you guys my strategy on how to beat her. I'm going to show multiple teams, and I will have timestamps in the video description so that you guys can find the one that works for you. So let's briefly go over her kit, and then we'll jump into a lot of different practical examples so that you guys can see the things that we're looking for. I'll do some freeze frames, and it'll be a good time. Enfys Nest has a really complex kit, and she does a lot of different things really well. She causes daze, she has really high tenacity most times, and she does her bonus protection part, and all of that stuff is really tough. I think the thing that really messes with people the most, though, is her bonus protection mechanic, so let's zoom in on that for a minute. So this is the mechanic that makes her almost unkillable. That's the one that is the biggest hang-up for a lot of people to be able to take her out. She does a lot of good things on offense, but the thing that really hangs people up and messes with them is her bonus protection. And so, we don't really care about the critical chance part of this, so I'm just going to skip that. But whenever Nest is damaged by an attack, she gains 40% bonus protection stacking. This bonus protection increases an additional 40% each time. These bonuses expire and reset at the end of her turn, which means that they don't just stay on her forever. The thing that makes her unkillable, of course, is the bonus protection, and every time you hit her, she just gains extra bonus protection. And real quickly, the bonus protection stat is based off of health, and for whatever reason, that's the stat that it pulls from. So if she has 40,000 health, then every time you're hitting her, she's gaining an additional bonus 16,000 bonus protection. And so every time you're hitting her, you have to exceed that amount if you even want to come close to being able to take her out. And really, that doesn't work. She just keeps adding so much protection that it's not feasible. You can't really get through it fast enough. And so if you can't use brute force to be able to kind of get through this protection, then the only reasonable way to take her out is once her turn is ended, being able to hit her, and do some actual damage because all of her bonus protection is gone. And that's the pretty tried and true method. That's the way I do things. Instead of just trying to annihilate her or do something else sneaky like only hit health pool, which some characters do, that's absolutely a option. Now, one thing that a lot of people will do is stack a lot of tenacity on her so that you can't stun her, you can't daze her, and that's a good strategy. That's my own Nest. You can see here the stats. 161 tenacity is a pretty strong amount, but there are definitely ways to get around that, and we will go over that. So now that we've kind of gone over some of the things that make her annoying and hard to kill, let's actually get to the killing.
Enfys Nest has been a constant irritation forever.
So a few of these videos are a little bit older, and I just do want to assure you guys that most of the kits have not changed since then. Definitely not Nest, and really none of the different counter teams that we're using here have changed. So here we have Jedi Training Rey faced off against Ewoks with Nest, and I realize that that's kind of an oddball choice here. These Ewoks are nothing to write home about. They're not interesting at all, so we skipped ahead in the battle to where Nest is just basically all alone here, and you'll note that I've done a few different things to her here, but mostly left her alone, and you typically just want to leave Nest alone until you can take her out at the very end. Alright, so now that all of the furballs have been roasted, we can focus on Nest. So I'm going to freeze frame for a minute here and just point out a couple things. First off, look at the first debuff that you see on her. That's tenacity down. That is a great debuff against her because it completely negates any tenacity stat that she normally has. You get that on this Jedi Training Rey team from BB-8's basic attack. So if you call an assist from Jedi Training Rey to BB-8, BB-8 will hit. Tenacity down is applied regardless of tenacity, and after that you can apply debuffs to Nest as if she had no tenacity whatsoever. Second, and potentially even more important, is her protection bar. So you can see the purple health stat above her head. You have her health, and then right above that, it's purple with a little bit of that greenish color, whatever it is, and that's her bonus protection. So as the fight progresses, watch her protection bar. After she takes a turn, even after she's done being stunned, that counts as a turn, her protection will disappear, or at least her bonus protection will. The normal protection will stay in place if she has any. And I will freeze frame it again just to illustrate this point in a minute. One really important thing that I cannot stress enough here is that you need to be doing a lot of basics against Nest when you're using Jedi Training Ray. And the reason for that is that you have a way of being able to reduce her turn meter if you're not careful. But you can only do that if you're using specials. If you're using your basic attacks, then she's going to continue to build turn meter, even if she's super slow. A lot of people don't add speed to her at all just so that you time out against her. But as long as you are only doing basics here, then she's going to continue to build her turn meter and eventually take a turn. So you can see here that as I've been hitting her, she's come out of stun every once in a while. R2 and Finn keep stunning her, and that's great. That's what we want. We don't want her to be hitting us and regenerating her health. We just want to be slowly taking her down bite by bite. So, we're hitting her, just doing basics, and her turn meter is slowly going up. This is a really slow nest, which means that they were well modded. It's doing what the person who owns her wants. And here we have the freeze frame. You can see, look at her bonus protection. It's all the way full, and really that bar doesn't show any real indicator of just how healthy she is. She has thousands and thousands of health right now, or rather bonus protection. We can't dispel it. We can't do anything. We just have to wait it out. But immediately after I stop this freeze frame, you'll see that she takes a turn while she's under the stun, and when she's done taking that turn, her bonus protection will be gone and will be able to hit into her health. Okay, so let's freeze frame one more time. She took her turn, technically, because she was stunned. She didn't actually do anything, but you see that her bonus protection is completely gone. Don't look on the top right near her avatar with the purple bar. That doesn't do anything. It's no indicator of anything. You can just see, though, above her character that she has no bonus protection. She's vulnerable. We can actually hit her for real damage and not just build her bonus protection. And so that's exactly what we do. We give her a big hit, and she's close to dead, but you can see we're doing more hits on her, and she is just continuing to build her bonus protection one more time, and so we need to wait until she takes one more turn. R2 goes in and stuns her, and now we're just using basics again. Just hit her with basics, You'll see that tenacity down is still up from BB-8. And we're just waiting. We're taking a lot of turns. We're hitting her, and it can be time consuming. It can be frustrating, but if you're patient, eventually she does take a turn, as you can see, and you can take a hit. So you'll notice that I actually used BB-8 there to use his special attack, because his basic attack may not have actually finished her off. She has a potentially larger health pool than he can deal with, even with just a sliver of life remaining. And so he used his special instead so that he didn't do any damage, and so she didn't grow bonus protection back, and then one of my actual damage dealers could finish her off without timing out. So that's just one tip to be able to avoid timing out against her, which is a real threat at times. So let's look at another example, this time going full speed without any kind of pauses or freeze frames. And this is kind of an ugly match that I used against a Django lead bounty hunter team with Nest. And you'll see that right away I used Jedi Training Ray to put daze onto Nest. And that just means that if we do any hits on her, if we do any AoEs or whatever, she's not going to be able to counter. And Jedi Training Ray is actually really good. Even without tenacity down, they have such a high potency just from R2-D2's bonus that he gives them, that you don't necessarily have to just rely on tenacity down. Tenacity down is a great debuff, and you want to use that for sure, but you also want to make sure that you're focusing on other threats. So you can see that I had Jedi Training Rey go in and hit Nest, and now she's stunned, and that's great, but then Boba was able to just execute my trooper, and that's not necessarily a great thing. Kind of an ugly match, and so, maybe it would have been wiser, instead of trying to stun Nest, trying to stun Boba, who could one-shot one of my characters. You need to focus on the entire battle, of course. Taking out Nest is important, but she can wait. So, every time she takes a turn, however, every time she comes out of stun or whatever, you want to take one hit on her if you can spare it. If given the totality of circumstances, you want to hit her once before she takes another turn. So then you hit her, she regrows her bonus protection, then you just leave her alone for a while, or just do basics on her as you will. And once she takes a turn, then you can hit her again. You just kind of alternate between the full team that you're facing and Nest. And every time she takes a turn, then you just hit her one time, then leave her alone. And eventually you'll kill the rest of the other team, assuming it's a strong Nest. But as long as you continue to do basics on her, then you should be able to take her out. Alright, so now let's jump into my favorite counter for Nest, and that is First Order. And, I'm going to show two different instances of using First Order against Nest, just so you guys can see everything. And the battles kind of work a little bit differently with First Order. First Order is another control team, just like Jedi Training Rey is. And that means that you use a lot of stuns, you use a lot of things like tenacity down and debuffs, you use a lot of turn meter manipulation, and so you have to be careful when you fight Nest, because when you put tenacity down on her, you're going to be able to reduce her turn meter indefinitely if you want to. And so you need to be cautious. You're going to be using the only attack using basics trick again. I wanted to show you guys the full battle here just because in context, I want you guys to be able to see that First Order does a really great job of being able to take out these Kira teams. So you see that I was kind of hesitating there for a little bit with First Order Executioner, because I was considering doing a hit on Nest just to be able to get her real protection down, so that when she took another turn, then her bonus protection would go away and her real protection would stay gone. I decided to instead take out young Han Solo for some reason. I don't really know exactly what my reasoning was there, but you want to take out the support cast as fast as possible so that you have all the time to be able to deal with Nest. And so here I did decide to take a hit on Nest, and she had an instance of not countering, which is pretty rare. You need to be able to take out L3 first before you're trying to take out Nest, because L3 is going to be able to dispel any kind of stuns or debuffs that you have on Nest. So it's a pretty important thing to just take L3 out. Even though you're tempted to stun Nest, every time you hit L3, she'll just dispel anything that's on Nest. So take L3 out and then worry about Nest. Alright, so let's freeze frame for a minute here. The protection and health are full almost on Nest here. And we've hardly done any damage. We are dazed, and this is a prime candidate to be able to time out. Even though we have 3 minutes left, you have to be careful because there are a few things you want to avoid here. So you want to do as big of a hit as you can on Nest while she has her only protection up, like she doesn't have any bonus protection at all. Once you do that, then you're going to settle for basics until she takes another turn. This is especially important because First Order Officer and First Order Executioner both have the ability to reduce her turn meter with their specials. Now, the one exception to what we want to be doing here is when Kylo Ren goes, the lead, the unmasked one, he's going to use his 2-turn stun on Nest, which she cannot resist. Even with really high tenacity, it's irresistible, and that means that she's going to go through an entire turn without going at all. She'll technically have her turn meter will reset, and her bonus protection will disappear. And after that, you can hit her again, and she's still stunned, and hopefully Kylo Ren is able to get another stun on her before she actually comes out of stun, and you can just take her out without her actually doing anything, even though you don't have access to daze. Alright, so back into real time here. We did a big hit on Nest, and it took her health down a little bit, and now we're just biding our time. You can't really see her bonus protection here. It's not really well represented over her character. It's not well represented by her little profile on the top right corner, but she does have a lot of it, and so I'm just doing basics, waiting for her turn meter to go, and you can see that my first order officer actually shot his special there and reduced her turn meter, and that's sometimes something that you want. If you want the fight to go a little bit longer, just so that you can regenerate your health and protection, like First Order can do, then you can reduce her turn meter before she's going to take any more big hits. So, that's absolutely a strategy, but if you're just going for the kill, then you want to avoid using any specials at all. Okay, so I just want to freeze frame it one more time just to kind of get my point across here. You see her bonus protection right now before she takes a turn. She is stunned currently. She's at pretty loaded turn meter, and in a minute she's going to come out of stun. She'll take a turn, even though that constitutes doing nothing. She'll stay in stun, and she will be reft of her bonus protection. Okay, so you see we're hitting her, and she takes a turn here. Freeze frame for a sec. Her bonus protection is gone, and we can do another big hit on her. And fortuitously, we have Fox here. Now, if it was like First Order Stormtrooper or even Kylo Ren Unmasked, you'd want to use one of their specials that don't actually do damage to her, and let one of the heavier hitters be able to take her out. And so, luckily, we just have Fox here, and he's able to one-shot her. And 59 banners is a pretty good result. You can get 60. I've gotten 60 lots and lots of times against that team. So, it's legitimately strong. You could beat Nest every single time. And, my First Order are not super high gear, like they're gear 12, and that's reasonable, but they have no relic levels whatsoever at this point. Alright, so what we're looking at here now is our Phoenix counter, and we're looking at our enemy Nest. She has over 150% tenacity, which is really high. It's really hard to counter that. You need to be able to deal with that tenacity, though, in some way, if you're using Phoenix. Alright, so I should clarify that this is just a cleanup job. Phoenix are not taking on an entire team in this case. They're just trying to take out Nest. But they can time out. They could be soloed by Nest, in fact, if you're not careful. So in this case, I do have Zeb modded so that he has a really high potency. He has 124%. Combined with Hera and her Zeta, it's actually at 150% when she calls him to assist. And so on his basic, he should be dazing her every time, and sometimes stunning her if she's already dazed or exposed. So that's a very important part. If you don't have tenacity down, which not all teams do, you need to find some way to counter her ability to counter, and counter her ability to continually take turns and regenerate her health. So either you stun her, or you daze her, or you do something to be able to mitigate that. And in this case, for Phoenix, it's just having a really high potency Zeb in the rafters. So this fight doesn't really last too long, so be watching. Nest doesn't have any protection left, but she will be growing her bonus protection, and so, we're just trying to mitigate that. We use Zeb here, and he immediately gets daze off on Nest. She takes a turn, and now we can do damage to her again. And Sabine here is just trying to do her specials, whatever. We don't really have any way to reduce turn meter on Nest, and you can see that Nest doesn't have daze anymore, and Hera actually should have called Zeb there to assist, to be able to daze her again. Luckily, he was able to go pretty soon and be able to hit her one more time with daze. And so now she can't counter, and now we're just chipping away at her health. She'll eventually take another turn, she'll heal a little bit, but if we do things right, we can either stun her or just do enough damage to take her out. So in this case, I was able to just take her out. Phoenix do a great job of being able to beat Nest, at least a lone Nest. Usually they have struggles with the team that she's surrounded by, but if you want a team that can finish her off pretty well, I guess Phoenix is one option. Alright, so we did a couple of our low-end teams being able to counter her. Now, sometimes you're going to have the luxury of being able to use other high-end teams to be able to take her out, and I just want to show you guys a little bit of that before we go. And so, Jedi Knight Revan is not ideally going to be taking Nest out just because he can take out a lot stronger of teams, but he is very capable of it. He's not a team. He doesn't have a team that will time out against Nest. Like Padme will time out against Nest a lot of times. It's happened to me a couple times. You know, you can time it right that you can be able to beat her, but I wouldn't really consider that any kind of reliable counter, despite what other people say. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but at any rate, so we're trying to just clear the enemy team here as much as we can. You know, they're doing a lot of damage, actually. Jedi Revan is, like, almost dead, and I don't remember if that Jango has his unique, but Revan almost just completely got taken out, and that wouldn't have been good, because Revan has a mechanic against Nest a mechanic that works well against Nest, and that is every time you do an attack on her, it reduces her maximum health pool. And so we're taking out all these other characters because we don't want to just get stuck trying to take Nest out, because it does take a little bit of time. And once all the support characters are gone, or at least most of them, because Dengar is hiding bravely, then we're going to start working on Nest. And so, you know, you do a mark from Revan here, and her health pool starts to shrink. Like every time you're doing a hit on her, her health pool shrinks by 10%. And I believe that might be resistible. When I was looking at her kit, or at his kit, rather, it just doesn't say whether that effect is resistible, and so you have to think that it probably is resistible. But if you do enough basic attacks and you get the stun on her, then you can just kind of pick away at her, and once in a while spike a minus 10% health. And honestly, I think maybe it just applies anyways, even though the verbiage would perhaps imply otherwise. So we're freeze framing here, just looking at the stun, looking at her bonus protection one more time, and let's move on. So once again, we're going to hit her. Now she's done with her turn, which was a stun, so she didn't do anything, and you can see that she's vulnerable again. So now we're just going to do as big of a hit on her as we can. So that means calling Yoda for an assist, and that didn't quite take her out. You see she has some bonus protection back, and now I'm just trying to do some hard enough hits to be able to take her out through that bonus protection, because it hasn't stacked too high yet. And you can see it's kind of a futile gesture, and actually doing those attacks caused her to counterattack and therefore regrow some of her health, so you got to be careful with that. Luckily, though, her health pool had been reduced so much that a quick burst of attacks just finished her off right after she took her last turn. Alright, and now we're going to show 3 Traya versions of being able to counter her in a row, just so that we have a complete picture. I think, personally, I think that this is a little bit of the lazy way out. No judgment on you if this is your go-to to be able to take Nest out, but the whole goal of Grand Arena is to be able to kind of trade up and be able to take squads that you normally wouldn't be able to, or that your opponent wasn't counting on you being able to. And so just being able to annihilate Nest is nice. It's stress-free. It's wonderful because the teams that she's on are usually not able to take out the triumvirate. But honestly, I mean, just because you can do it, I mean, the triumvirate can take on so much stronger teams out there. Like, they can take out Padme teams, they can take out clone teams, they can Geo teams, all these different things. And so, in my opinion, I use Nest on defense a lot, personally, and I consider it a win. If my opponent tells me that they used Traya to take out my Nest, like, that's a huge win in my book. Now, the exception to that rule is perhaps in this circumstance where she's with an already pretty strong squad. Like, it's a pretty difficult counter to be able to take out Newt in any circumstance. Like, you're always going to be paying in banners. Like, there's not like a pain-free, easy way to be able to counter this team. And so, if Nest is there, then maybe you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. and be able to counter. I mean, I still think that you should maybe try to look for a different team, but in this case, maybe Newt with Nest is going to be too easy a target to pass up, or too good a target rather. So you see here we're just fighting. I have an undersized squad, and I isolated Nest immediately because I don't want her to be able to counter. But then after that, we just kind of want her to hang out there. We don't want to be hitting her because there's no point. Eventually we're just going to annihilate her, and we see that annihilate is up, and we can just take the hit and move on to the next fight. So these fights are probably the least interesting out of all of them in this video, in my opinion, but there's some good to be said about being able to get the easy counter, and every once in a while the stars will align and you'll be like, oh well, okay, so this Nest team is absolutely something that Traya shouldn't usually be used to counter, but I have Traya available, and if I don't use her on this squad, then I just won't use her at all. And I'd caution you to be mindful of banners. Like, sometimes other teams that are less awesome than Traya will be able to regenerate their banners more easily, and therefore be able to take out the team with better banners. And sometimes the better part of Valor is just not using Traya at all. But in other circumstances, it's a really great benefit to be able to use Traya against this team, because it's not stressful. Like, you're going to be able to win, and there's something to be said for that. So we see that Nihilus has gotten his man or woman again, and that we're gonna wrap up the video here, guys. I really hope that this has helped you guys understand a little bit more about how to take Nest out. I hope that the officers in the various guilds out there use this video to show their recalcitrant guild members how to be able to counter Nest, because it's an important aspect to territory wars. It's a really important aspect to Grand Arena. If you want to compete at the highest levels, you need to be able to take her out without necessarily relying on Traya or Jedi Knight Revan or whatever. And so, hopefully this helps. But even if not, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.